things are leading to we just started the recording. Good. Thank you, Miranda. All of these things that people are asking for, the presence, the speaking up, the dealing with intimidating people, even asking questions, and not asking questions, but answering questions, all of those were leading to the ability to influence the outcomes, to influence the decisions that are being made, and for the better, right? Because the people I work with are all highly conscientious, high performers. Because if you're not highly conscientious, you don't care about your communication. You just assume that you're God's gift to the planet and that everybody else is an idiot, right? So those people are not my people. I don't talk to them, but a lot of times they have influence. And so we're going to talk about why. And it is very typical of me to take a topic that is very large, like influence, and say, I'm going and boil the ocean in 1 hour. So I am not actually going to tell you everything about influence, but my goal for you is to come out of this with a couple of practical things. I'm all about practical. We're not going to talk about, the 5 sources of power or any other theoretical constructs. We are going to talk about practical things that you can do to experience more influence today. So what I would like before I start sharing my slides with you is for you to type in the chat if you can. If you're watching it on your phone, it may be challenging, but to type in ideally, like what would be something that you would like to use your influence for? What would you like to achieve if you had more influence? I think that would be helpful to know. And and also if anybody needs the handout, we can post it in the chat if someone doesn't have it. So, but I want to keep your fingers involved. So type in, if you can think of like, why would I want to be more influential or have more influence? What would that do for me, or what good would that bring to the world? It'd be interesting. So give you a minute to empower. All right. Yes. Empower your staff. Okay. So I interpret that your staff would take on more responsibility and do more things and get credit for it and have more of their mark in the world. To collaborate better with my stakeholders on the team. Yes, exactly. Better collaboration, like having your voice heard, feel that feeling like even if people don't agree with you, it is very rewarding to feel like they have heard you, even if they don't agree. To influence people to engage. Okay, to engage more thoroughly. That's a really important goal. Lydia is a very kind person. Not that the rest of you aren't, but everybody, Lydia wants to build confidence and kindness. So that's good. That's a wonderful goal. For those of you who have just chimed in, if you're able to, I would like for you to write in the chat why you would like to have more influence. What would be the purpose of it? It is more work, like everything. You have to do things. You have to do a little bit more, things a little bit differently, but it does become second nature. That is the good. You make some changes, some tweaks, and these things become second nature. And if you notice on your handout, like I'm not going to go into number 1 as much. It says, who are the people you want to influence? But I want you to think about the concept. Some of you know it's your team, like you put that here. But influence can be very broad, like the influencers that we think about, like, the Kardashians, and I don't even know, these people that we know who they are, we know kind of their style, we know maybe some of the brands that they're associated with, but we really don't know them. Like the influence is very superficial. And then there's the people, say, in your family and your close friends, where the influence is very deep. A few weeks ago, I think it was a few months ago, my stepdaughter rushed into the room where I was and asked me, I need an argument for the existence of God or something like that. And so, this is huge, because just running in, because she was having a conversation with someone and she wanted to make an argument for the existence of God. And I don't remember what I told her, but she rushed back to her phone and I heard her say verbatim what I had said. And I was like, yeah, that's influence there. So, but that's an intimate relationship that's built up over, many years and living together. So there's depth of influence and there's breadth of influence. So I just want you to consider, like what direction you would like your influence to go. And with that, I am going to share my slides and get this program going. I think this will be the best option. Oh, we have Julie's here. While I'm setting this up, why doesn't everybody type in where you're tuning in from? I think that is an interesting thing to know about everyone. Let's see, I need to get to my slides. Hold on. You're seeing my messy desktop. And we don't want to go into that. Okay. Slides. Bam. Okay, so this is, I want to pull up the chat though, so I can see what people are typing in the chat. So many things to handle. I don't think I can see the chat while I have this screen share on. Where are we chat? Charleston, Athens, Beaufort. I know that some of you are from further away, but anyway, yay to the South Carolinians and the Georgians. Good for you. We need to have more influence in the world. I think that will make it a better place. All right, so this is our agenda. How the audience has changed. I'm going to touch on that lightly. I'm going to talk about introvert strengths, and maybe you're not all, card carrying introverts the way I am, but you definitely are a thoughtful person or you would not be here. We're going to talk some about intimidating audiences and how audiences have changed. Was everybody seeing the slides okay? Is that a yes? I'm trying to modernize and I'm using Google Slides instead of my usual PowerPoint. So that's got me a little consternated.
Once you went back to look at the chat, the slides disappeared for me.
Okay. All right. I will pull them up again. Thank you here we go. But this is not the pretty view. Let's see. How about now? You seeing it? All right. That is, thank you for the head nod. I was going to, let's see. Amanda said she's in downtown Charleston and said there were internet issues downtown. All right. Well, how are our audiences different? This is not going to surprise everybody or anybody probably, but I want to remind you that people are more scattered, they're more distracted, they're more tired, they are thinking about so many different things. It is harder to have a conversation with a person. You might have noticed that. That is why the internet has changed our brains. We don't fully appreciate that. Well, you know it, but I mean, it has really, like this brain drawing that you have, that you see in front of you. I have several of them. These brain drawings, I had an artist develop before COVID in 2018, because even then, the internet had changed the way we've taken information and the way we're influenced. So people are highly distracted, overworked, overwhelmed, over-zoomed. And the way our communication, if you're working primarily virtually, most of your communication is transactional, which means it's like, we got to get this meeting done because we have this a deliverable or this purpose, but it's not as relationship building as normal communication. So it is not the same. Or is this not? People are, they have more anxiety, more anger, more frustration, less patience. As you see, like the message on social media, no nuance, just like so and so, like you're just a horrible person or you're a great person. Like there's no nuance, there's nothing in between. People are trained with the internet to get instant answers. You Google that thing and you get an answer in less than, like, they measure in nanoseconds. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So things that have some complex explanation, it's a lot harder. Things that are nuanced, things that are complex are harder for people to understand. So that's the reality. But your opportunity as a thoughtful person is that if I think about how to communicate this in a creative way that is memorable, I'm going to have more influence. People are tired, people are lonely even, there's a big thing of brain fog. You may have experienced it yourself. Someone today was telling me that she felt like she was not remembering words. I hear that a lot from people for whom English is not their first language. And I always tell them, no, it's not you. Everybody is struggling to remember the words. So our brains are changing. We don't even know all the impact of that right now. But I can tell you, it's harder to keep people's attention. It's harder for people to understand things that are not obvious. And influence is a trickier game. When you want that real influence, that good thinking person's, like, this is rational thought, it's a harder game to play right now because people are going for the bright, shiny object. And, if you just looked at our news headlines, like the things that we're talking about in the news are just like so insane and so ridiculous and so irrelevant to everybody's lives. It's because of this change in our brain behavior. So what you want to be is brain friendly. That means clear. That means creative, using different words, selling it, going into the purpose. That is brain friendly. And really your advantage, which we're going to go into the advantages of the introvert or thoughtful person, is that we do think. And we think before we speak often, which is what you want to do. And by the way, if anybody has questions, please put them in the chat or speak up. We'll have questions at the end. But, if you think of a question in any moment, please, I want to hear it. So today, the influence game is harder. It's like we have these defaults to the louder people, the taller people, the more flashy people. That's just because those people leave more of an impression on our brains. But we do notice when somebody is very authentic, when someone is not always blabbing, is not always chattering. Those people also get noticed, but they tend not to, they tend to hold back too much, is what I see. They just kind of wait until they're called upon instead of raising their hands. And I want you to raise your hand. Okay. Yes, that's the level of excitement you should be feeling right now as I go into the internet. See, that kind of looks like Shannon in the front there, I think. Well, okay, so influence is not a matter of personality. You may think it is, and definitely certain personalities have an easier time with influence. But basically, any aspect of a person that is memorable, whether it's being tall or having pink hair or dressing a certain way, dressing unusual, having an accent, all these things that make people stand out, that helps on the influence, because the influence, a lot of that has to do with remembering. And at the same time, we have our memories that are not working very well. So it's not a matter of personality, although it seems to be. Certain personalities do have an easier time, but it's really a matter of practices. And I'm going to share the low-hanging fruit practices. I'm going to let you know what practices you can implement to have more influence. So let's look at the strengths and the weaknesses here. And if you're thinking to yourself, Laura, I'm not an introvert, think thoughtful person, because I know that you're a thoughtful person. Thoughtful people and introverts to me, in my mind, they're the same, but maybe not everybody would agree with that. We listen better. And that is the whole thing. That is your whole ticket to the influence, is listening, but listening in a specific way and taking your message and bringing it, letting them know that they've been heard, and connecting what you're saying to what this person expresses as a priority. That, in a nutshell, is your ticket to influence. Noticing, we have a strong power of observation. We can pick up on, Laura is saying this, but her body language is not convincing me. Somebody doesn't look like they're feeling that well. Somebody looks extraordinarily good today. You know, we tend to be more observant, and the observation is easier in the real life, in the face-to-face. So if you're not in the same room, your brain is having to work harder and is getting less feedback. So if you want to observe, you have to really pay attention, and that's tiring. Of course, we have wit that we don't tend to share because it's, we think, well, that's not relevant or that's not important to the meeting. But when that wit is an aspect of your personality, and being influential means bringing more of yourself to work. It means not being just a robot that just shows up and does the work. Like, who are you? Bring that person, bring that funny side, being thoughtful, thinking before you're speaking. An egomaniac. Thoughtful people tend not to be egomaniacs. Isn't that a blessing? But yet, let me point out a little false dichotomy here. This is something that holds introverts or thoughtful people back from being influential, because they have this false belief that if I talk about my achievements or the good things my team has done, or if they talk about themselves in any way, then they are an egomaniac that's driving people crazy. Because if they have observed those people talk their heads off, take forever, talk about themselves, and they think, well, I don't want to be that, so I'm zipping it until somebody asks me. But that's a false dichotomy. That there's a spectrum there, between being the chatterbox and being, taking a vow of silence. There's a long way there. So, you just speaking up a little bit about yourself, about your accomplishment, sharing the wins. There are ways to do that. And what I call the good news. The good news is my team accomplished this week. The good news is I finally solved that pesky problem. The good news is, this thing that was bothering somebody, I figured out how to stop it. I mean, everybody wants good news. So that's a little bonus there for you. Sharing your wins as good news is a way to elevate the energy and expand your influence. We tend to be interested in others, empathetic, creative. And this is where I want you to use your creativity for influence, is using a different word or a different metaphor or a different picture, or even like some people will dress in a way that, they have a special pen that stands out, or sparkly shoes or something like that. Use that creativity to express part of yourself in a small way. That's why I say I try not to use the word great. I mean, it's hard sometimes because we use it like every other word is great. Everything's great. But if you say it's wonderful, delightful, fun, swimmingly, splendid, splendid is a great one. That's a strength. That's something that you can bring to the table that's going to increase your influence, and people will see and recognize it. Even if they don't comment on it all the time, it is definitely there. And we also crave authentic connection. And what's another thing that holds us back sometimes is that we hate, So how was your weekend? Oh, fine, good. Yeah, we went to the water. We want to talk about real things. We want to talk about things that are more interesting to us. So learning how to bring that also, like you don't have to, like I didn't ask as an icebreaker, how are you doing? I did ask where you were from at second question, but the first question was, what is your most deepest desire in regards to influence? Because that's a deep question, and that's a question that's interesting to me. But it's not like a normal question to ask somebody right off the bat. So those are the strengths that we bring. Now let's look at the opportunities. Pleasing people. Now, being a people pleaser is not all bad, because pleasing people is a way to influence. But if you come across as that you'll do whatever in order to please a person, then you're seen as someone to be manipulated. And there's a big difference there. So you want to please people, but you have to have your standards, your point of view. You were there to please people. Like, I want to please you all today, but we're going to talk about influence. We're not going to talk about body language. I'm not going to, if somebody says, oh, well, what about science? I don't want to talk about science. If that would please somebody here, you're in the wrong webinar. So you have to be pleasing, but don't let yourself be manipulated by other people. We people pleasers sometimes experience anxiety when they feel like so-and-so doesn't like what I said, or what I'm going to say is not going to land well, or I have to share bad news. And that's one test to get into senior leadership, is the ability to share bad news. So you want to not have anxiety about pleasing people. And what is your source for that? We're going to go into it in just a slide or two, but it's really going into your purpose. But anyway, watch out for people pleasing. Watch out for anxiety that comes off as a negative vibe. People don't know what's wrong with you. It is not attractive. It is not magnetic. Sensitivity is good, but if you take things too personally, then people are afraid to talk to you. They're saying, oh, Haley's so sensitive, you can't say anything around her. That's not good. Then that's a weakness. Sometimes because we don't join into the conversations because we think they're stupid or boring, was like, oh, Laura thinks she's too good to join our conversation. She's aloof and she doesn't care. Well, that's just, the price of being myself sometimes, that people can think that. And so that with this line of weaknesses, you have to understand that sometimes some people are not going to like you, and be okay with that. Hate being put on the spot. And here's another thing about my highly conscientious high performers, which is the description of each one of you, is that your source of confidence is knowing everything. Like your domain, upwards, backwards, A to Z, everything. But as you go up the leadership chain, you're going to be put in situations where you don't know everything, and you still have to function. You have to function. You have to give something, even though you're not completely sure, and you're out of your comfort zone. And the key word for that is being directionally accurate. But that's something. But if you hate being put on the spot and you get asked something, you don't worry about giving them the square root of 2 million. You give them directionally accurate. Like, what I know is this, what I've observed is this, and don't even promise to get back to them, because they don't really care that much most of the time. And then again, my introvert, highly conscientious, high performers tend not to speak up. It seems too hard. It's going to make the meeting go on. I'm only going to speak up if I can change the trajectory of the planet, or if I can solve world hunger, or if I can, fix the climate crisis, then I'll speak up. But until then, no. That's thinking about it the wrong way. You are waiting. You have the bar too high. I want you to lower the bar and speak up more often with a small level of value. It doesn't have to be world changing. So with that, I'm going to stop for a second and look at the chat. Oh, it was like, have some traits. Some of the traits for weaknesses and strengths overlap. Oh, yes, Michaela, that is true. That's why I use the term thoughtful person. And also, extrovert, introvert is a spectrum. It's not a binary. We all have our extrovert days, our introvert days. And even Jordan Peterson has a different definition. He says that the definition put out by Myers-Briggs that we've been using since the 1930s, that he doesn't like that definition of introversion means that being around people sucks up my energy, whereas being an extrovert, I get energy. He defines it as the ability to express positive emotion. And I actually tested on his personality test as highly extroverted, which I thought was very bizarre, but I did test low in compassion. So I guess that kind of makes up for it. So anyway, great observation. Does anybody have another question you want to put in the chat or ask before we go on? Is this anybody getting like major enlightenment right now? Seeing, what you bring to the table, what other people bring to the table. All right, so we are going to go now. We're kind of like setting the stage of what it takes to be influential, is to make that mark on people's brains. I mean, really, this is not a brain class. It's not a communication class. It's a brain class. Let's see. All right, so what kind of communication is not influential? If you don't give context, and that's something that we do sometimes, we just we think of something and we raise our hands in the meeting and we say, 1 + 1 is 2, and we don't sell it. We don't say how this is solving a problem. Nobody pays attention. And then 5 minutes later, Bob says, oh yeah, well, as you know, that 1 + 1 is 2, and that's going to help us. And you're like, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, that is so amazing. And you figure, I have gone through a lot of bitterness and anger about not being heard and being overlooked, and it's not fair. But sometimes if you don't give a little bit of context, like why this is important, then people don't listen because they're distracted. If you don't have a clear purpose for what you're saying, if it takes you forever to get to the point, if you're talking all over the place, about, because one thing leads to another, to another, to another, same with the lengthy, unclear summaries. And these are a lot of things. Some of these are, more extrovert qualities and some are introvert qualities, but this is unclear, non-influential communication is when people do not want to work to get the point. They don't want to work. I mean, our brains are lazy, and we're more lazy than we used to be. So in a nutshell, if you went to sales training, you would learn that to sell to somebody, they have to know, trust, and like you. And to experience influence, they have to know, trust, and like you at scale. So obviously you can't know 1 million people. Like some celebrity may have 1 million followers, but they don't really know each other. So sometimes in your situation, I know you all come from different backgrounds. We've got a really great variety of roles represented here. Sometimes it's good to get to know other people in your company, people in other industries. People do have to know who you are in order for you to exert influence. So they definitely have to know you. They have to like you. And of course, I know we're all extremely likable, but sometimes thoughtful people can be too serious. And this is something I struggle. Even my kindergarten teacher wrote a note to my mom that I was too serious and too concerned about my little brother. You know, at age 5, I was just like really worried about how my little brother was going to turn out. Like, what? But I learned having my own business, because I was also more of a serious college professor, but nobody wants to hear a serious college professor outside of college. And even in college, you don't want to. So there has to be that likability. And that's why you see, guys, in companies, you'll see these people who are very likable and fun, and they may not be like the brightest bulbs in the box, but they're likable, and they have a high level of responsibility because they're easy to work with. People like them. So to have influence, people have to like you most of the time. I mean, if you are giving out $100 bills, you'll be popular for a little while, and even if you're not likable. And then the trust factor. And here's my observation on the trust factor. A lot of thoughtful people spend too much time trying to prove that they deserve the role that they have. And that's just annoying to your audience. They try to prove too much, you know, their points of view. And I think you can assume that if you're in a role that people think that you can handle it, whether you can or not is another story, but they don't care about your proving it. So that turns people off. It comes across as a lack of confidence when you build up this case to support your recommendation. Generally, you would make a recommendation and then maybe give a little bit of support, but not a big case about it. I want you to think that if you have a job, if you have a role in a company, you're good. You don't have to prove it. Now, if you want a promotion, that's another story. But I see thoughtful people spending too much time trying to prove that they deserve their role, and that's just counterproductive. So stop doing that. Remember, these are the people. They're distracted. They want answers fast. I was just talking to this guy who was recently promoted to director at American Express, and he's coming from in the data analytics world. And he, like many of us, was in his old role, senior manager. He knew everything. He knew from A to Z all about the data and the programs and the data crunching, the data visualization. And then he got promoted and he's like, I don't know anything. Like, there's so many things I don't know. And he was feeling very insecure and trying to learn everything about his new responsibility like he knew in his old one. And I told him, that's not going to happen. You're not going to get there. You have to make decisions and exercise influence even when you don't know everything. You just have to trust yourself. So here are things, influence is like glue. Here are things that we're going to help you. These are the practices that I see work for influence. One is listening for hidden agendas and fears. So this is, I'm going to tell you about a situation I hear about, and I finally figured out what's going on. Like, when you're in a situation and you're trying to prove, let's say that I'm trying to prove, we'll just say 1 + 1 is 2. And everybody's like, no, Laura, it's not true. It's not. It can't be. It's impossible. You're wrong. And you're like, this doesn't make sense. So when that happens, and of course, it's not going to be the case of 1 + 1 is 2. It's going to be a case of something else, but it's going to be where it doesn't make sense. The resistance to what you're saying is when you need to look deeper. And we're going to go into that, but is not the issue. If you're just like butting heads over something that seems obvious, it's not that issue. It is something deeper at play. And that is a huge insight for you. And it's almost always going to be fear. And I'll tell you a story about that in just a minute. But that's one thing, is just when you feel resistance that doesn't make sense, it's illogical, irrational, unsubstantiated, go deeper. Like, what are they afraid of? And that's going to be your answer. Connecting what you want to say to what other people have said. It greases the wheels. People feel heard. It sounds more important. It sounds, it just to piggyback on what so-and-so said, I think that blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And what Miranda said, and then we could even do it faster if we did this other thing like that. These are easier ways to speak up and add a little bit of value and to get your voice heard. Sell it before you tell it. That is so important. I say that probably 70 times a day. The selling is the context. Why is what you're going to say important to this audience at this moment? Why are you speaking? Like, you should think that I had this little sign I show people sometimes. Wait, why am I talking? Maybe you need to tell your audience, remind them, because remember, the brain is like, they're like, they may look like, but inside they're like this. So remember that. Ask better questions more frequently. At least, and if you can't ask better questions, just ask more questions, because that's a great way to get your voice heard, to mention topics without making a statement. If you feel like you're going to get resistance, you can always ask, so, but what about this? Or have you considered, or what would happen? It's the shortest, fastest way to get engagement. I think it was Haley who wanted to engage her team. Ask them more questions. Don't tell them, ask them. Instead of saying, this is the problem and this is how we're going to solve it, say, this is the problem. How are we going to solve it? That question asking gets other people engaged, their brains engaged, and that builds your influence. Affirm and add is kind of like number 2. But especially in a high profile meeting, an intimidating audience, I'm kind of already getting to that. Well, since our president has said the priority is blah, 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 I think we should also, just tie it together, link it. And, we're not going to talk about presentations today, but you've gotten a lot of tips already. Sell it before you tell it, be creative. But if you can be better at presentations, because I know all of you can prepare your presentations in advance, that's probably where you shine. So you raise the notch a little bit. That is your opportunity for influence, because there's usually many people in the audience, many people, and one to many means more influence. Michaela asks, is the recording going to be shared? Yes, it will. I would not want you to miss one word of this amazing wisdom. So yes, that's our question there. This is, as you know, Aristotle, the very first communication coach, roughly 500 BC. And he pointed it back then that influence follows enthusiasm. So enthusiasm, in my case, I had to learn to generate it, because I was like, I'll be enthusiastic when I win the lottery, like when I get that promotion, I'll be enthusiastic. Otherwise, I'm doing my work. Those of us who were good in school, turned in the papers, got A's, oh, Laura, that's so good, blah, blah, blah. Then why would you waste your energy being enthusiastic? Well, because people like that. When you're enthusiastic, they assume confidence. And when they assume confidence, they assume competence. And that's why you see so many crazy people in positions of power, is because of that. But use it to your advantage. Like, don't let them overlook you because you lacked energy. You don't have to be enthusiastic 24/7. You've got to manage your energy. But when the moment comes, you need to sell it with enthusiasm. That is something that people follow. They don't, it's a subconscious thing. It's like, wow, if she's saying that, it must be true. All right, intimidating audiences. It could be the C-suite. It could be like investors. It could be somebody that might hire you. How do you have to get your head straight. The problem with intimidating audiences is that if we let them intimidate us, our brain freezes, we don't function, then we get additional brain freeze and additional dysfunction, and it just gets worse from there. So you have to go in with the right mindset, which I'm going to tell you, but you have to lead with purpose. You have to know why you're there. If you have been called into this audience that's intimidating to you, it's not because of your good looks. I don't care how pretty you are. It's because you have something of value that they want. And if you don't know, make an assumption. Don't tell them the assumption, but you need to operate on some kind of purpose statement. I am here to talk to them about my topic. Here we go. They want you to be the trusted advisor. It's and that's where you remember I mentioned a couple slides ago about trying to prove yourself. Don't do that anymore. Just be the trusted advisor. Even if you're the janitor, you know about picking up the trash, the right kind of trash cans, the recycling business. You are the trusted advisor. Step into that. That's what the intimidating audience wants from you. What are your recommendations? That's what they want. They don't care that you're scared, that they don't want you to try to prove yourself. They assume that you are there for a reason. So you need to go with that. Yeah, I'm here because I know about my domain and these are my recommendations. The energy, you want to be bracing like a nice cold shower, maybe, but it's warmth and competence. Sometimes we get so concerned about the proving ourselves that we're very serious robots, and that is not influential. Robots do not influence. They do a lot of things. They don't influence. You need to bring the warmth, and that's a trusted advisor. Think about, your rich uncle who loves you and gives you, nice checks at Christmas. He's competent, but he's also warm. Your grandmother, warm and competent, not either or. You've got to bring both. That is what the trusted advisor energy feels like. Now, I have 2 slides taken from real clients who prepared purpose statements. This was a purpose for an on-site, anyway, a little team building, planning thing with her team, leading with purpose. She prepared this statement and shared it with everybody first. That purpose is what gets people on board. Even if you're saying something crazy like we should wear red shirts on Friday, if you can say that with a purpose, connect it to a purpose, you're going to be more influential. And here's another example from another. So this is something that you can think about. We're not going to go into it now, but preparing, why am I here? What am I trying to accomplish? What is the influence I want to exercise? Thinking about that ahead of time, writing it down is a very good exercise. So look at the 2 dogs and tell me which one are you right now. We've gone through 3 of our 5 points. Are you feeling like number 1, like you're ready to go? Are you 2, a little frustrated? Or are you just dancing away? I want to know. Dog number 1, dog number 2, dog number 3. Let me see for a second. What do we have? 3. Yay. Well, what about the rest of you? What is it? None of the above? 1, 2. Oh, somebody feels stuck in the bowl. Haley's 1. All right, good, fantastic. Let's keep going. Keep going. I'm number 3 right now because I'm having fun with my peeps. All right. I talked about hidden agendas. You've got to understand what your audience could be afraid of, especially the scary, intimidating ones. In an intimidating audience, they fear losing prestige. Well, you can read the list. You read the list. And I'm going to tell you a quick story of how this shows up. Although I see it all the time. In any large company, the people at the top look for the people in the middle to give them these data to make the decisions, but they don't understand the data. So they blame the people in the middle because they didn't understand the data is too much data. And they're really looking for the people in the middle to tell them what to do. But they want to blame the data in case it goes wrong. So that's one thing that goes. Another situation was with a senior engineering director of a software company in Boston. This guy has been working on a promotion to vice president all year. In September, his boss, who is a SVP, had, didn't say it, but kind of insinuated that it was in the bag, that was going to happen. And it's still not there in December. So I asked him, how long she had been at SVP and how many people she had promoted to vice president in her time as a SVP. And she had promoted one guy who had to be eventually demoted back to director. So of course she's paralyzed with fear of making a mistake. Now, is she telling my client that? No. But that's why is she taking, they're just been stringing him along, no real reason. They're afraid. Another client, a European dude, he did not accept that he could take his super complicated slides and make a simple to follow story out of it, because he feared that as vice president of this big beverage company, that he would not look like a vice president if his slides were too simple. So these people are not going to tell you their fears, my friends. They are not going to, but that is what makes them crazy, what makes them afraid, which makes them not follow your recommendations or not go with what you're proposing. You have to look, how can you mitigate the risk without, you're not going to say, so, Mr. President, what are you really afraid of? Try it if you want to. Let me know how it goes. But you can probably, you're smart cookies, all of you. Figure it out. They're afraid of something. Can you mitigate that risk? Can you address the fear indirectly? So we are now going to the second page of the handout. If anybody has questions about what the answers are, let me know. I have not really been going over it because I'm focused on giving you so much information. So these are the miracle phrases. The miracle phrases are just sentence starters to help you sell your points, help you sell it before you tell it, help you bring up the topic. Always, if you don't use a miracle phrase, you can always phrase it as a question. But these are the things, sell it before you tell it. That is what I want you to take away from today. So you're going to bring up, it doesn't matter, the budget, the timeline, the onboarding. I want to bring this up because of blah, blah, blah. That's selling it. That's giving them context. Don't just say we need to do X. That's no context. That's easy to ignore. That's easy. Well, why do we need to do that? No. I bring this up because we have this need and, blah, blah, blah. But I bring this up because is the most influential word in the English language. So you'll see a lot of that here. This is important because when you bring something up in a meeting, that is like, pay attention. This is important because that's a miracle phrase. Number 3 is for your partial answers. Remember, we talked about directionally accurate. When they're asking you this, but you just know this, you say, well, the way I see it, what I have observed, this is what I'm seeing. And don't tell them what you don't know. Do not tell them that. The last time I was in Venezuela, which those of you know my story, I lived in Venezuela. I'm married to a Venezuelan. Actually, my first husband was also Venezuelan. So I have a thing for this country or Latin Americans or accents or something. But the last time I went to Venezuela, it was, as it is now, a train wreck. We go to a restaurant. It doesn't matter what restaurant. They give you the menu and you say, oh, I want this thing. And they say, oh, lo siento, señora. I'm so sorry. We don't have that because have a national chicken shortage. And so you say, well, then I'll have the pepperoni pizza. And they, oh, we're out of pepperoni. What else would you like? And then you just go on and they're always like out of stuff. Well, I don't care that they're out of stuff. I understand the situation, but just tell me what you have. And the same thing goes in a meeting. They ask you, they don't care what you don't know. Don't tell them you don't know. You have to know something. Give them what you know. What I do know is, or what I have observed, or what I believe to be true, that's what they care about. They don't care about what you don't know. They literally do not. All right, another great selling phrase. The beauty of this plan is, the beauty of this change is, the beauty, and another word besides beauty, I like beauty, but opportunity is a good word. The opportunity we have. We love, Americans in general, we love the word opportunity. That's why we don't have problems. We have opportunities. So use the word opportunity. The beauty of this is, and then let's say that I'm working with Miranda on a project and I think she did a terrible job. Of course, I would never think that of Miranda, but let's pretend that I do. Instead of saying, so I think you really messed up on this project, my friend, I would say, so Miranda, what do you think about the project? How do you think it went? You get them to talk first, and remember, tie your comments to what they said. Oh, I can see what you thought it was good. Well, I can see that. However, it was not good. And let me tell you why. But you get them to speak first. That's more influence. That's more engagement, because it's not just you blah, 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 just talking and words just falling out. It's engagement. That's what you want, is that conversation that is in, people are involved. They're thinking. That's where influence happens. So remember the things that are not anti-influence. All of those miracle phrases are your ticket to give the right amount of context, not the history of the problem, because nobody cares. But why is that important? That's what they care about. Why are you bringing this up? Why are you talking? That if you use those phrases, you're good to go. So we've got how your audiences have changed. This has been so much information, and this is anti-pedagogical. I've always been criticized by pedagogists for giving too much material. My response is I teach to the smartest people in the class. So here you are. We've gone over the introvert strengths. We've gone over intimidating audiences. We've gone over hidden agendas and the multi-purpose miracle phrases. So what I want for the rest of our time together, which is basically 5 minutes, your takeaways and or questions, because that's what this is about. Takeaways, questions. You can type it in the chat, would be probably the easiest. But if you want to be heard, you can unmute yourself, I believe. So what'd you think? Was this not like good? These are the things that I teach every single day. Oh, thank you, Michaela. Is to get them to speak first and engage. Yes, Amanda, is so true. If you get them to speak first, then they're listening already better, because you're responding to what they say. And literally all people care about is what you can do for them. It doesn't matter, that how beautiful you are and smart and engaging, and that you are a high performer. They want to know, what about me? So if you get them to talk and then tie it to what they've said and tie it to their specific words, you are going to be so influential. Yes, the phrases, the miracle phrases. I'm glad you like those. Use them. And you know what? You can use them all the time, and it'll take them approximately 3 years before they notice that you're using the same thing all the time. So enjoy. They'll be like, doesn't she always say that? Yes, she does. Yes, they're very good. And they are on that already for you on the handouts. Asking people about themselves and their goals. Good. Yep. You want to tie it to that. Good. No, so much positivity. What makes people, yes, putting them in a positive light. Exactly. Even the people, it's more about your audience. It's all about your audience, because that's what they care about, is what can you do for me? And what do Pam say? Yes, the positive light. I mean, even your worst performers think of their God's gift to your team, I bet. And and I've seen people do triple, quadruple backflips through hoops of fire trying to help those low performers. And what I have come to is really the question of not a good fit. And so, there's no reason to pull your hair out and get all angry and bitter and go to therapy. It's about, getting them out if you can and into a different role. Oh, thank you. Yes, that was excellent, Pamela. That's very good. So I am going to send you the recording, send you a $5 Starbucks. That was so much fun to do that. You've got the handout. I'm putting together a 5 or 6 webinar series on this topic, is just more in depth for 2023. Again, low price is because it's easier for me. I just want people to, especially right now. I went to the dentist Tuesday and he did not raise his price. I was so grateful, because so many things, like they say it's 8% inflation, but the price of so many things is a lot higher than 8%. So I thank you all for coming. Shannon, the 30 ways I can use. Oh, wow. Shannon, awesome. Yay. That's a win. All right. Thank you all so much. It's great to see you. And I hope to see you again soon. I'm going to do another one of these in January. So please keep in touch as always. And great. I just care about you so much. Wish everybody happy holidays, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right. Bye-bye. 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 Oh, thank you, Pam. Oh, yay for us. Yes.